Dun, 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 dun. That's the theme song, because we are once again walking the hallways of the StarFleet Leadership Academy. I would say Star Trek Leadership Academy. That's not right. The StarFleet Leadership Academy, where we're learning some lessons from Captain James T. Kirk, Admiral James T. Kirk. And I'm kind of going back into the archives of Star Trek and pulling out some lessons that help us as leaders. If you're a person that has a responsibility of leadership, this lesson applies to you, as they all do. And we all lead in some way. We lead businesses, we lead groups, we lead teams, we lead in our homes, and we also kind of lead ourselves sometimes. And so there's always a leader in us that's waiting to emerge, and we find ourselves at times having to step into that leadership role. We like it when people lead, and they lead well. Arguably, one of the best of the original television series shows was one that was simply entitled The Balance of Terror, in which Captain Kirk is facing off against an enemy and a captain of a ship who ends up being very much Kirk's equal, just as clever, just as sly, willing to use a trick or two to pull that trick out of his sleeve and change direction at the last moment and surprise him. At one point in their cat and mouse chase across the galaxies, the two ships go completely silent in hopes of hiding their locations from one another. And as the hours go by in this silence, Kirk retires to his quarters, and he's visited by ship doctor, Dr. Leonard McCoy, who comes in and sees Kirk there, and Kirk is thinking, worrying, pondering his role. And Kirk has this line. He says, "Why me? I look around that bridge and I see men waiting for me to make the next move. And Bones, what if I'm wrong?" And Kirk asks the question, not really expecting an answer, because he just rolls it out there. It's a moment where he is reflecting on the fact that he doesn't have the answers. And Bones gives him an answer, because that's the kind of character that Leonard McCoy was on Star Trek, DeForest Kelley. And he says to him, "In this galaxy, there is a mathematical probability of 3 million Earth-type planets. In all the universe, 3 million galaxies just like this. In all of that, and perhaps more, only one of each of us. Don't stay here in this room and destroy James T. Kirk." In other words, Dr. McCoy, the good doctor, was telling his friend and the captain of the ship, Jim Kirk, don't allow your self-doubt to destroy you, because you're not here by accident. You are in the very place where you need to be. And it's not an accident you got there. It's not a fluke. The probability of that is too great. You're a man that's made for this moment. See, for Kirk, he wasn't afraid to be vulnerable and admit that there was something overwhelming about the task. But he was willing to be vulnerable and admit that the task that was in front of him was great. But at the same time, he would also wrangle that back in and do what he needed to be done. You know, I think back on times as leaders that most of the people I know, many of the people I know, often feel overwhelmed by it. Here's the amazing thing about that. I've seen that the followers who are following a leader, the people who are trusting that leader, never really realize when that leader's feeling overwhelmed, or never really realizes how many times that leader will deal with self-doubt, maybe a bit of confusion, and maybe a bit of unsteadiness. Because a leader has to be able to have those feelings and know it's okay to have those feelings, and also recognize the fact that that does not disqualify them from being a leader. Kirk put that on display time and time and time again, and every great leader I know does exactly the same thing. Make no bones about it. Bones, I was talking about Bones McCoy. But make no bones about it. Leadership is tough. And if you're leading, you have my respect. And if you're leading well, you have much more of my respect. And if you're leading in a way that honors God, your act of leadership is an act of worship. But you lead strongly, and don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Don't be afraid to admit that the task is bigger than you, because I got news for you. If you're not leading and doing something that's bigger than you, you're really not doing very much at all. James Kirk was traveling the galaxy, and he was trying to make discoveries and boldly go where no man had gone before. You're trying to touch and change the world with the love of Christ if you're a follower of Christ. It's a big job. It's a big task. And if you're leading others in that journey, and if you're trying to lead others and make them successful in that, it is a sacred calling. That's who you are as a leader. If that doesn't overwhelm you, you're not paying attention. But at the same time, don't let it scare you so much that you're not able to do what you were created to do. I look forward to joining you next time here in the leadership halls of the StarFleet Leadership Academy.